soon as Anakin, because remember, Palpatine caused Anakin to be created, to be born. Because realize, too, Naboo and Tatooine are not far apart in the first film. It's not, inconceivable that when he was a little bit younger, or maybe a few years prior, old Palpatine went to Tatooine and spotted, Anakin's mom and said, hey, and caused something to happen. Did the whole immaculate thing, but they just thought, well, she'll keep it alive, and it's under the radar. I'll come back every once in a while and check on what's happened, So he knows Anakin is going to exist. Anakin was created by him, and by the way, Anakin was created using the dark side of the Force. So that's something else to consider, and that's why they can never ultimately control. I think that's ultimately what it is. Anakin was created using evil, and so ultimately that's what he's always going to go to, is being evil. They can never fully contain that. The Jedi never realized Anakin has this inherent flaw in him, and that is that he was created by evil, so he's going to be evil. But what they could do, though, is train him enough to be good that ultimately, hopefully, the good decision will come in. And it just got twisted in his mind because it's just, he's made of evil, and but he doesn't realize it too. So that's something else to consider. The Jedi. So beginning of episode 2. So Padme keeps getting these assassination attempts on her, or they just started, and it's like, well, this is really something pretty trippy. We need to send our best guys, and I think by that point, it was, as was understood, Obi-Wan was the best Jedi, or at least one of them, one of the most effective Jedi that they had, and he had prior dealings. He already knew what was going on, and you kind of give your best. If you're going to have your best guy, you always give him the best job to take care of because he'll get them done effectively. And it's also like, he'll stay alive and he'll be able to train others. And I think also they realize that with Anakin the way he is, since he's the best Jedi, that's the case, So he is recognized as the best Jedi. There's a new Darth, or a Sith apprentice, and that's Dooku, who makes his appearance. So you can imagine that Dooku was an old retired Jedi, and but he'd been seduced by the dark side of the Force. But he may not have. So that's something else to consider, is that he may not have been seduced, but I think ultimately, he was. He started out to confront. He was going to confront Palpatine, but Palpatine did a number on him. Was able to basically say, hey, buddy, you can get a lot of power if you work with me. And so I think that's why he ended up joining. And Darth Dooku was able to really lead and organize and really, energize the Trade Federation into a more militant body. And as part of that, too, was that he developed, like a lot more droids were developed, for different things. And then that's also where the beginning of the droids that have like Force-like ability, and that's because it's like shortly after that in the Clone Wars that Darth Grievous is spawned, so to speak. This new thing, which is Darth Grievous, is going to be formed. Darth Grievous' sole purpose, by the way, is to kill Jedi. The Trade Federation being so scientifically, effective, they were developing, androids that could kill Jedi. And I think what they ultimately realized was that, well, you can only have something physically that's so effective. You have to give it a biological component. And that's what Grievous became. Grievous was this charged, or, you can imagine that they took a sample of tissue, whatever, from Anakin, and grew it into a person. And that is what Darth Grievous became. But Darth Grievous was a Jedi assassinator. He was a killer. and because he was trained in the ways of the Sith, and he was just so good at the Force, and that's why he could kill a lot of Jedi. That's why he had all those lightsabers on his belt or in his cape. And it's because he had a biological component, and that's why he had the breathing problem and stuff like that. The end result is, at the end of the second movie, a lot of Jedi are killed, but there's still a lot more to go. But it's the Jedi they were a little overwhelmed. They were like, oh man, this is an actual army that we're fighting here, and they were almost kind of ineffective, but they were just barely able to pull it together and do it. And the last saving grace was that they had an army that they could automatically take charge of and use, and that's what helped them. And they realized we have to use this army; it has to be for us. And so in a way, it's provided by Palpatine. Palpatine kind of lets it happen. As something else to consider. But Palpatine wants it to happen. He wants them to basically feel that, or the Jedi to realize, oh, this is something very happy, or something very good to happen for us. We have an army which answers to us. They'll do exactly as we say, and they almost don't look at the gift horse in the mouth, But they always kind of realize, well, there's something fishy about these guys, about this clone army, and I think they always kind of knew, and they kept that in mind. Because something else to consider is that this clone army, they weren't too bright. Some of them were kind of given a little intelligence. Some could develop intelligence, but they're made to be borderline idiots, because you don't want them to think for themselves. You want them to be effective enough to fight, but not really have too much free thought. Very effective army, and you kind of realize, so they must have some higher programming installed in them too, and that's what ultimately Order 66 was. But what Palpatine's got to do is he has to kill as many Jedi as he can, and he has different ways to do it, and part of that is through this constant fighting. But because the Jedi are so effective, he just can't do it. So he develops Greivous. He creates Greivous to go out and be his Jedi assassin. And that's what Greivous does. He just annihilates so many Jedi. Just overwhelms them. So that's why right away... and then the other thing that Greivous did was, as kind of like a final way to get rid of Jedi, Greivous launches this massive attack on Coruscant, which is, which by the way is just going to totally freak out all the people on Coruscant, and that's why they're going to end up giving all this ultimate power to Palpatine. But it's also a way to draw out the Jedi and draw out the best Jedi too. So what they're thinking of doing, what Palpatine's thinking is going to happen is, well, I got Dooku and I got Grievous here. And it's going to be a huge target for the Jedi, because the Jedi are always going to go right down the throat. So, and that's what the Jedi do. What do? They send in their two best guys, Obi-Wan and Anakin. And they realize, well, you know what? The more Jedi we have together, the more exponential, but the smaller the Force, and, and the more effective they seem to be. Because what you do is you just kind of sneak in, one or two guys, kind of thing, and just have them go right for the head. And that's what. But we'll send in our two best guys, because we know Anakin's really good. Because, like I said, by the time of the third movie, Anakin is, he's already been a general, or he was a general at one point. He led a military force, and because there's been all these other things, and before the third movie begins, Anakin becomes a Jedi Knight. He's recognized by everybody as just this elite, extreme guy. But he's still the dark side of the Force. And nobody can pick it up, because he's learned to mask it, and hide it. Because they always say, tell him, what do they always tell Anakin? Hide your feelings, suppress your feelings. So he doesn't let on that. Yeah, I'm part of the Jedi. Anyways, the Anakin is slowly fed poison in the ear by Palpatine, and becoming his apprentice and learning some other ways of the Force. But it's really that where it really starts becoming, it's after that moment where they rescue Palpatine. And this is something interesting how the beginning of Episode 3 begins with the rescue, the beginning of Episode 6 begins with the rescue as well. So, something to consider. But Episode 3, they abandon. Or they're, one of them says, "No, leave them, abandon that guy."